Welcome back to Aspire to Lead, as I have the wonderful opportunity of bringing back a special guest, Dr. Rachel Edoho-Eket, as she is a principal, TEDx speaker, wonderful author, and the president of the Maryland Association of Elementary School Principals. We're going to be talking about her brand new book, which is going to be talking about a very important topic, relational intelligence, as she's written with Dr. Brad Johnson. And this is an absolutely beautiful resource that's going to be very helpful to a lot of leaders. Before we discuss these important leadership topics, I just want to let you know that this week I'm going to be dropping a bonus episode announcing a brand new Aspire to Lead project, as I'm going to be launching a cohort model. So stay tuned for more information about this impactful group that's going to be starting for not only aspiring leaders, but current leaders. And I am so overjoyed to see how this group is going to enhance everyone's leadership journey. Stay tuned for an in-depth look at how this is going to be constructed and the special launch date. With that, let's go ahead and jump into this wonderful conversation with a very special leader, Dr. Rachel Edoho-Eket. Welcome to Aspire to Lead, where we empower educators and school leaders to grow, inspire, and thrive. I'm your host, Joshua Stamper, author, speaker, and leadership coach, bringing you conversations that spark transformation, challenge the status quo in education, and equip you to make a lasting impact on your campus or in your district. For more information and resources, visit joshstamper.com, as we're looking to ascend to new leadership heights together. Welcome back, Aspire Leaders. I am so excited this week to be with an absolute rock star. She's been on the show before, and if you've checked her out on social media, you're going to see that she is speaking all over this country and doing phenomenal things, and has a brand new book that's been skyrocketing up to #1 in the charts. Rachel, thank you so much for joining once again on Aspire to Lead.
Josh, I am super excited to see you, and thank you again for this opportunity.
Oh my gosh, it was so cool to see your book. You sent me an advanced copy. It is an amazing resource. Can't wait to dive into that. But before we do, Rachel, I want you just to share a little bit about yourself in regards to what's being updated in your role, what's going on in your world. I know you're a featured speaker in various places. I see you're all over the place. So if you wouldn't mind sharing, and obviously you've been on the podcast before, they need to go check out that episode first off and then come back to this one. So what's the update in your world?
Lots of great things are happening. I'm super excited about. I think the biggest change is that I'm now the president of the Maryland Association of Elementary School Principals, which really has given me, and thank you, given me an awesome opportunity to get to know so many amazing school leaders, not only in our state, but also across the country. So I love that new role. I'm getting my feet wet with it. I'm learning, which is a part of the leadership process. So I'm very thankful to work with an amazing team at MAESP. I also had an opportunity to travel to Ghana this summer to speak at ASCD Ghana, which was absolutely incredible. I'd never been to Africa before, so it was a great opportunity to go and interface in a brand new country. So I just learned so much from the educators and leaders who were present. And I really came back with a lot of great lessons. But the main thing that I learned was, even though we were separated by thousands of miles between our countries, there's so many similarities between the work of educators and leaders in both countries. So I just was very thankful for that opportunity. And then one last thing that has changed, I'm at a new school. This past year, I switched schools. So that's been a wonderful opportunity for me to continue to learn, to meet new people, and really to apply the strategies from our book, Relational Intelligence, because it really is about making sure that we know our students, staff, and community as best as possible so we can be of the best service. So that's been a great learning experience as well.
Very cool. So I thought I saw that on social media that you had switched. So what are the differences between your last position and this one?
So it's the same position. It's still a principal, but it is down the street. It's actually closer to my house, which is nice. It's nice to have a closer commute. And, you know, one of the major differences that I enjoy is being a part of the community where I'm serving. That's something that I always wanted to do as a principal. So when I'm out and about in the community, I'm in, you know, restaurants or in the grocery stores, I see our families and students everywhere. And it's just a great feeling because they get to see our family as well. So it's nice to be embedded in the community as a principal, because those connections really, everyone gets excited to see each other. That's the biggest difference, still the same level. And we are a national blue ribbon school. So we have, it's just an amazing group of teachers and leaders and students there.
Very cool. All right. You brought it up and I'm so excited. And I have to kind of hold myself back because I want to talk about your book. So let's talk about it. You had talked about your new role, obviously being able to implement some of the things in the book. You are co-author of this phenomenal resource, Relational Intelligence, the key factor to exceptional school leadership. I want to know the origin. So where did this concept come from, and why were you crazy enough to write a second book?
Yeah, well, Dr. Johnson is absolutely amazing. He's a prolific writer. He is so well respected. I had an opportunity to meet him at a conference a year or two ago, and we just really clicked. We really had a similar, I had been following him, of course, on social media, and I love what he talks about with supporting staff. That's really important. We don't always see that messaging, but that is definitely his bread and butter as himself being a former principal. And of course, this very big advocate for education. And so we initially just started having conversations and we just hit it off. And we thought about how we could bring this book to fruition, because not only do we believe in this project, but also we know that as administrators, we're struggling right now. We're struggling to get and recruit the best teachers because there's just not a lot of teachers in that pipeline. And so I know we have joked about this. This is, a buyer's market and a seller's market. Right now, teachers for several years have had that upper hand and they have that choice. And oftentimes when a teacher is deciding where they want to go, as principals, we and administrators, we have that opportunity to really make that welcoming environment, not only for our teachers who we want to recruit, but also those who are with us who we need to retain. Because again, teachers have a lot of choices. And so our book really focuses on making sure that we have developed the trust, the communication, and the connections amongst our staff so that our teachers want to come to school every day, that they want to be in the environment along with our staff members and service to kids. So that's really why we wrote this book, and the reception has been truly amazing, and we're very, very thankful.
Yeah, I mean, relationship is so important for our leaders. And of course, one of the pillars you talk about in the book is trust. That's a huge component to things. And I'm just wondering, how can school leaders really be intentional about that as far as building and sustaining trust with their staff, specifically around maybe change or crisis?
Yeah, those are big. And we actually have a full chapter devoted to change and crisis. Yep. I will say, me coming to a new school, this is where I really had an opportunity to flex a lot of what we're talking about in the book. One of the challenges that I had was I followed a beloved principal. And it's one thing when you are following a principal that may be not as popular, but when you are following someone who is an absolutely beloved and amazing individual, it's a harder lift, in my opinion. It's just a different lift. And so I really wanted to focus in on making sure I come into the community with our staff and our families, just with that willingness to listen and to learn, to ask a lot of questions, and having that willingness to take feedback. That's really important when you're developing trust with people, because people are always watching us as school leaders. They want to see not only what we're saying, but they want to see what we're doing. They want to see how we are responding to different things. And so that was always on the forefront of my mind. I wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to meet with anybody who wanted to meet with me that first summer. So I set up dates to meet with staff and with families, in addition to having those kind of school-wide community events that we had, those summer play dates and things. But really that one-on-one time is where we make the connection. And we talk about that in the book, because this is something that I have struggled with as a school leader. I'm someone who is extremely driven by achievement. I'm an achiever. That's one of my strengths from Gallup. And so the blind spot in that is I have a tendency to move through things very quickly. And you can't do that with people. So what I learned making the transition to a different school is I had to slow down. I had to put my technology to the side, and I really had to give that one-on-one attention to people. And then not only listening, but also acting upon what they're asking for. So if there's some valid feedback and it's something that we can honor or something that we can do, we did that. And if it was something that I couldn't honor or it wasn't possible, I communicated that transparently. So those are just some ways that I have helped to develop trust amongst our staff. And now I can say in the second year is so much easier knowing the people, knowing their strengths. We've just really taken off this year. So that's been a huge blessing.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thinking about relationships, sometimes they can be messy and in a school setting. And I know in the book you talk about like leadership as potentially looking like a transaction, or it could look like micromanagement, some of those things that we kind of fall into by accident, sometimes on purpose. But you also talk about that transformative leadership. And I'm wondering what that shift looks like in practice for you or for Dr. Johnson.
Yeah, so we give the example of a conflict within a team. This happens all the time. We know that conflict is inevitable. And I think as leaders, we have to normalize conflict. A lot of times at the root of conflict is not that someone doesn't like someone else, it's that their values may not be exactly aligned. So one of the things that we talk about in the book is making sure that as school leaders, we are lifting up the values and trying to figure out what they are, number one. And then two, how can we align those values together? Because we're still serving that common goal, which is to ensure that our students have the best education that's possible, that our students are reaching their full potential. So the example that we give, and this has happened several times over my career, is really just making sure we're listening to the staff members and coming together. So it's not just enough to listen. We have to have that kind of collaborative spirit and that collaborative action to say, we know what our values are. Now, how can we fuse together? How can we make something better as a result of our time together? So an example we gave, it was a concern about curriculum. And there were two thoughts about whether it was too easy or too hard. And this happens all the time in our buildings. And so we thought about how we can modify the curriculum so that all of the students have an opportunity to achieve. And this was a real life example. So we actually came out with a better product because both people were invested in that work. And so when we talk about connections, when we talk about that kind of transformative experience, it's making sure that we are playing to each other's strengths and that we are listening to each other so that we're able to come out better on the other side in a stronger relationship, rather than having two people who can't be in the same room, who will not interact, who are only doing things by compliance. That's what we want to avoid, because if you have that too many times in your building, your morale will go down and people will leave. People will leave that environment. So our goal with the book is to make sure that we not only recruit, but that we retain our teachers and staff in our buildings.
I want to talk about your framework. You have this beautiful hope framework that you talk about. And right now, that's a perfect segue because you're talking about culture. And this really helps as far as, creating a culture that's really about, showing folks value and making sure they're feeling supported. So will you just share a little bit about that framework and how folks can use that to make a positive influence in their culture?
Yes. So I've got my book right here.
Beautiful.
So one of the things I'm talking about is, hope is a foundation of all that we do. If we don't have hope, we don't really have anything. And so we're really talking about that, bringing about that opportunity for people to grow. I know sometimes, in the field of education, sometimes people can feel stagnant. Sometimes if you've been teaching for a long time, people think, okay, my only thing to do next is being an administrator, and I don't want to do that, right? Sometimes people have that attitude. Sometimes people are excited about those opportunities. But what we really wanted to lift up was, again, looking at people's strengths and giving them an opportunity to flex them within the school. Letting people lead committees that they're passionate about. As school leaders, we cannot do it all. We have to delegate and we have to trust that our ideas may not be the best in the room. I know that's something that I believe. I have worked in groups of people and it is always a better product than when I do it myself. So we really want to give people that opportunity. And then we want to praise people. We want to continue to praise people, and knowing that people like praise in different ways. Sometimes people like loud shout outs, and other times a quiet note or just a favorite snack, right? Some people just prefer that. And I think we need to be tuned into people. One way that we've done that is to do a quick survey in the beginning of the year and asking those sort of questions. How do you like to be recognized? What's your favorite salty snack? What's your favorite sweet snack? What's your favorite drink? It seems very arbitrary, but those things matter to people. When you can get your favorite snack, I know for me, if I can get my favorite snack, which is like smart food popcorn, I'm excited about that, and some Twizzlers. So most people I know,
I can hear it in your voice, Rachel.
Oh, yes. I get very excited about that. But the staff knows that. They'll bring me bags of Twizzlers, and they're always on time. If we can do that for our staff, it makes a big difference. And then finally, just that encouragement. We all need encouragement, no matter what your position is. We need to encourage our custodial staff. They're the foundation of our schools. Our secretaries are running our buildings, literally, not just our teachers. So it's also thinking across our buildings. How can we really beef up that encouragement for people? One of the things that we have at our school is very simple. It's just a shout out board. So there's paper, we tape it to the board, and people will just write a nice compliment to someone else. And at the end of the month, each person gets to keep it. And I have saved all of those compliments over the years because they do mean a lot. And sometimes when you're having a bad day, you simply need to reference that, and then you feel better. So all of these things are simple. We try to keep it very budget friendly because we know we don't have a lot of money to buy snacks all the time. We don't have money to do great breakfasts multiple times a year, but it is that genuine and authentic praise, that genuine and authentic opportunities that are given. That's what makes a difference with people.
Yeah, you got me thinking about all of the snacks now. So I had coffee and peanut butter M&Ms always, in my desk. So
those are my favorites.
In my office. So yeah, I love what you're talking about. Obviously, that's huge for the culture and trying to keep morale up too with your staff. I'm going to talk about the HOPE framework real quick. So just to review, it's hope, opportunity, praise, and encouragement, which is that framework. And I love those terms so much. I think that's huge. The other component that I thought was awesome in the book, which I think folks just kind of take for granted as far as leaders, which is communication. Communication is so key for your success within your leadership journey. And a lot of times when we talk to aspiring or current leaders, they talk about, communication is a strength of mine. Mm-hmm. However, sometimes they just assume that all communication builds connection when that doesn't occur with each conversation. Mm-hmm. And so you talk through some of the pitfalls that may happen with communication. I'd love for you to just share a couple of those, but then also how can they move more into authentic and empathetic dialogue versus, just communication in general.
Exactly. I love that you bring this up because to me, even when I was a new assistant principal, it was the communication that really drove everything. And when we have miscommunication one time, I think people give you that benefit of the doubt. We're all human. But if you are someone who, if it happens multiple times, you're going to lose the trust of people. People need to trust you and to believe you at your word. And so I agree with you. Communication is what holds everything together. And so one of the concepts that we talk about in the book is that transactional communication versus the relational, and they are not the same. So me sending an email that is kind of a policy-based email that everyone needs to know, yes, I'm communicating, but that's transactional. It is one way. I'm spitting out some information to you. You're not providing input to me, but I'm just giving you the information. We know that that is a small part of the job, but that's not the most important part of the job. It is the relational communication that makes the difference. It is the small talk that sometimes people say, I don't really have time for. Well, if you don't have time for the small talk, when you need to get to the bigger issues, your relationship will not have the foundation that it needs to be successful. And so one of the concepts that I like to talk about with people is understanding that the small things are actually the big things. The time that we spend asking about each other's families, the time that we spend bonding over, honestly, sometimes commiserating, just being honest, right? Asking about people's pets, their favorite sports teams, that is what builds a relationship. And not inauthentically, hey, how did the game go? Really actually taking the time to check in with people. Hey, you said your spouse wasn't feeling well. Do you have any updates? How can we support? Hey, I notice you're behind on the deadline for report cards. Do you need support with something? Not accusatory. I need this. It's a difference between saying, here's an email. You are late with your report cards. They were due yesterday, which we will send, but it's very different to not send that email, to approach the person and say, hey, this is not like you. to be behind? Is there anything that I can help with or support you with? Just think about that approach. If you are approached through emails with things like that, people are not going to be connected. They're not going to feel that connection. So those are the differences that we were talking about, transactional. And some of those pitfalls are real, right? And sometimes they're unintentional. But if you do them enough, then people will not be connected to you. They won't feel that. So it is important that we're conscious of how we are communicating with our staff. What's the majority of your communication? That's a reflective piece. And how can we move it more to the relational communication?
I think you're bringing up a lot of stuff that's wonderful here, Rachel, in the sense that, having those conversations, what happens a lot of times is we uncover things that we never realize that's going on in our staff's lives. Yeah. But we'll never really find that out unless we take the time to investigate or dive in and have that intentional conversation to get to know them as a human being. Yeah. And with that, sometimes we find out that there's a huge imbalance with the stress that's going on in their life, or maybe they're working crazy hours and not spending any time with their family, or maybe they're not getting a lot of sleep, or fill in the blank, right? So with this book, with this resource, Relational Intelligence, how are you helping be that role model as a leader to show like there is a balance, or there is a way to put some barriers in place to make sure that you are being the best version of yourself as a husband, a wife, a parent, because as an educator or a leader, that's a really demanding role.
Yes, this is probably what I'm most passionate about talking about. And this was a chapter that we really enjoyed writing together, because I am someone who has experienced a pretty extreme level of burnout. Sure. And it almost forced me to quit education. And that's not something that I take lightly. And I also know that if good teachers and leaders quit and leave, then who is coming behind us? And so part of this is very real conversations about sustainability. This is a hard job. And if we are going to show up every day and do our best, we have to take care of ourselves first. And I think that's something that comes with maturity, because when I was a new leader, I wanted to do everything. No one could tell me no, I could not stop. But I have learned that level of speed was not going to be something that was going to be benefiting me. When you're not sleeping, when you're not eating, when you're not exercising, you are not able to make sound decisions. You're not able to think clearly. I know that because that was true of me. And so we have dedicated chapter 9, an entire chapter, to boundaries, and not just here are some ideas for boundaries. We are giving you language to use where you can say a boundary and still hold the relationship with people. For example, one of the things that I usually am given opportunities to do committees or to do some additional meetings after work. Well, this past year, I said, hey, I'm at a new school this year, and I really need to commit my time to being in a new school and getting to know the people. And I simply don't have enough time to do this additional committee. And people said, I understand that. Thank you for letting me know. So you're still respecting the relationship, but you're putting up a personal boundary that works for you and your family. Because I know after school hours with my children, I want to spend that time with them. I want to spend the time with my family and do it without guilt. So I'm very big on protecting my calendar and protecting my time. And if I cannot fully commit to something, I will not do it. And, people will ask me, how do you have time to write 2 books? How are you, leading an organization? How are you speaking at conferences and writing? It's because of my boundaries. That's how I'm doing it. And I stand by them. And I encourage people to start small, start with one. One boundary might be, I'm not going to check my email after a certain hour. Just start with that one. See if you can do it. And then you kind of can build up from there. Or start with, I'm going to carve out time on the weekend to spend with my family and then not do any work for that 2-hour period. Start there. Those are all practical things that we can do that will help our mental health.
For sure. Yeah. Have those little baby steps
right.
to make those giant leaps. So those are huge and obviously wonderful strategies for any educator as they're looking to help with those boundaries. So Rachel, we're going to close the conversation here. I did want to highlight you being a featured speaker at FETC. So this is a beautiful conference. I'm so glad that they are featuring you. You're amazing. So what are you going to be speaking at this conference?
I have a couple of sessions I'll be doing, which
Awesome.
I'm just thrilled to be a featured speaker with FETC. Just completely grateful for the opportunity. We'll be in Orlando in January. I'll be talking about, number one, sustaining our joy in leadership. Number two, mentoring the next generation of school leaders through talent spotting of teachers. And finally, maximizing family engagement to increase student achievement.
I'm so glad that they're taking advantage of having you speak on multiple topics. That's wonderful. If you are in the area or you're going to FETC, make sure you're checking out Rachel and all of her fantastic sessions. I always love doing this with all my guests. So if there's something that our listeners can do tomorrow or next week to enhance their leadership journey, what is something that you recommend?
I recommend taking a couple of minutes to yourself and doing something that brings you joy. I think about people who are saying, I need a break, I need a vacation, I need these things. And really, a much cheaper way to do that is to carve out just a little bit of time to yourself, even if it's 30 minutes, to do something you enjoy. If it is unplugging, if it is watching your favorite TV show, if it's having your favorite meal, those things are sustainable to do. And they can bring you just enough joy to be able to come back to work the next day. It doesn't have to be expensive, but it does have to be meaningful to you.
For sure. Well, this conversation's bringing me a lot of joy, Rachel. So I can check that one off my list today. So let's talk about ways people can connect with you, because obviously you speak, you support a lot of folks all over this country. We talked about the book too, but I want people not only to go to your website, but I would love for them to connect with you on social media.
Yes, thank you. So I am on LinkedIn at Dr. Rachel Edoho-Eket, and I'm also on Instagram at Rachel Edoho-Eket. I'm on Twitter at Rachel Edoho-Eket, and you can find me at racheledoho-eket.com. I have lots of resources there. I have a free ebook that talks about balance, work-life balance. I also have several articles that I've been thankful to have written recently, Edutopia, DA Magazine, just talking through some tips and strategies for school leaders and educators. So I'm very, very grateful and looking forward to connecting with everyone.
Make sure that this is in the show notes and, of course, on my website, joshstamber.com. Rachel is, like I said, just doing so much work around the country and speaking. I mean, I love your two books. We had an opportunity at last conversation to talk about your first book. And then, of course, this one. I want folks to, as soon as they're done listening, jump on Amazon, get Relational Intelligence. It's going to help you as an aspiring or current leader. It doesn't matter where you are in education. These are skills that need to be honed and developed as you are working through your positive culture. So with that, Rachel, I just think the world of you. I'm so glad that we got to connect again today, and look forward to seeing just more phenomenal things that you're doing in the educational space.
Thank you so much. And the feeling is mutual. As you know, I'm really appreciative, and just thank you for all of your encouragement, Josh. It means a lot to me.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. We'll see you on the next episode.